Luna was an ordinary girl until she started talking to someone no one else could see. At first, it seemed like a game. But when she began telling secrets she could never know, her parents understood something much deeper was going on. They say, imaginary friends are harmless, but what if one of them was there for much more than play? Places she'd never visited, names of people dead decades ago, details of an accident her family would rather forget. Each conversation brought something new and more disturbing. First came the scratches, then the broken objects, and then the biting cold that filled the room. But nothing compared to the day a video recording captured his voice, deep, calm, real. When her parents finally discovered the name of this friend, they realized they weren't dealing with a child's imagination, but with someone who had a score to settle on the other side, and perhaps he wasn't alone. In the small town of Maple Creek, where the wind blew gently through the ancient trees and the wooden houses held stories that seemed to breathe, there lived a little girl named Luna. At 7, she had a curious sparkle in her eyes, but also a shadow of loneliness that the most attentive could detect. Her days were simple: school in the morning, drawing in the afternoon, and long silences at night. She had no siblings, and her busy parents rarely had time to delve into her world. It was on one of these silent nights, as moonlight filtered through the thin curtains of her room, that Luna began to talk to herself. At first, it was whispers, small, loose phrases, as if she were inventing a story for herself. Over time, however, the whispers became dialogues. There were precise pauses, muffled laughter, and responses that she seemed to hear, even when no one was there. The curious thing was that, with each word, a strange mixture of affection and melancholy lingered in the air, as if this new presence were made of empathy, understanding, and something bordering on sadness. The parents thought it was simply a child's overactive imagination, a natural escape from loneliness. But they didn't realize that this friend carried a silent, almost complicit respect. It was as if there was love and kindness in the exchange, but also a subtle invitation to an adventure that went beyond the ordinary. Luna's room was upstairs, and the floorboards creaked slightly whenever someone passed. One night, her mother came upstairs to let them know dinner was ready, pausing at the door before knocking. She heard her daughter talking, and it wasn't the lively, light chatter of a child inventing a game. There were pauses laden with meaning, questions she asked as if genuinely awaiting answers, and even small bursts of laughter, followed by long moments of respectful silence, as if she were listening attentively to every word of her invisible interlocutor. Luna asked questions strange for a girl her age, like, what happens after we leave? Or, why do some people fear for no reason? Her tone was one of curiosity mixed with courage, and it seemed she was receiving answers full of wisdom and inspiration. Her mother recoiled, feeling a strange mix of insecurity and fascination. Was this simply a reflection of a fertile imagination, or was there something more? What was intriguing was that, after these conversations, Luna seemed calmer, as if she had received a dose of understanding and generosity that soothed even her loneliness. In the following days, the presence of her friend became constant. Luna would come home from school and run to her room, dropping her backpack in the hallway, as if in a hurry to see him again. They talked about games, old stories, and even small solutions to everyday problems, like how to deal with a classmate who was picking on her. The friend told her to respond with kindness, for the power of kindness could transform even the most closed heart. He taught her resilience, perseverance, and emotional intelligence, always giving examples like, when someone pushes you, take a deep breath and remember that it might just be fear speaking for them. Luna then began to apply this advice, surprising even her teacher with her maturity. However, along with this new phase of confidence and hope, there was something her father noticed. Sometimes, when he passed by the hallway, he would see Luna sitting in the corner of the room, smiling into space, with a fixed, focused gaze, as if facing someone only she could see. It was a kind of friendship that brought love and reconciliation, but also raised questions no one dared to ask, at least. Not yet. One rainy afternoon, as heavy clouds covered the Maple Creek sky, Luna came down to the kitchen with a different expression. It wasn't sadness, but a kind of restlessness, like someone carrying a secret too big to keep alone. She sat at the table, absently stirring the mug of hot chocolate her mother had prepared, until, without looking up, she said, "My friend told me something important." Her mother, trying not to show excessive curiosity, simply asked what it was. Luna then began to recount specific facts about a place she had never visited, describing streets, smells, and even the sound of ancient doors opening. The most disturbing detail was that she mentioned the names of people the family didn't know, and spoke of past situations with the naturalness of someone who had witnessed everything. There was a mixture of understanding and sincerity in her voice, as if she believed she was helping, offering generosity by sharing this story. Her father, listening from the living room, felt a chill run down his spine. How could she know that? It was as if someone were whispering answers in her ear, words filled with courage and intelligence, but which aroused fear and insecurity in adults. In the days that followed, Luna began to reveal small fragments of information she learned from her friend. Sometimes she would be playing in the backyard, and out of nowhere she would stop, stare into space with a calm smile, and say phrases like, "He said the city river was once much fuller," or, "There's a place where the trees hide things they don't want to be found." Her mother tried to explain it as a play of imagination, but the descriptions were so detailed they were difficult to ignore. She would cite dates, describe ancient clothing, and even reproduce accents she'd never heard in real life. And most intriguingly, everything was said with affection, as if her friend intended to guide her, protect her, and inspire her to seek answers. However, her father saw an invisible danger there, something that shook the foundations of his emotional intelligence. He began to wonder if it was healthy to allow the girl to continue having this contact, or if he was facing something that required immediate overcoming before it escalated into something bigger. It was on a windy night that the most striking episode occurred. Luna, already in her pajamas, entered her parents' room holding a notebook. She opened it to the middle page and, in a firm voice, said, "He told me you need to know this." Written on the paper was a short but weighty sentence. "What was hidden is about to come back." Her father, a practical and rational man, felt his heart race. He asked who had said that, and Luna replied naturally, "My friend." There was no hesitation, fear, or insecurity in her answer, only confidence and a strange respect for that invisible presence. Her mother tried to downplay it, saying it was just another joke, but the girl's gaze conveyed an almost adult certainty, the fruit of a perspicacity one wouldn't expect from someone so young. And as if to put an end to the matter, Luna returned to her room, closed the door, and remained silent, as if she were once again hearing secrets no one else could hear. And it was in this emotion-laden silence that her father realized it wouldn't end there. The first time something physical happened was on a Saturday morning. The sun was timidly streaming through the window, and Luna was alone in her room, talking quietly. Her mother, in the kitchen, heard a dull crash from above. She ran to check and found the bedroom door closed. When she opened it, she saw her daughter sitting on the floor, her cheek slightly scratched and a look that mixed innocence with a strange courage. "It was an accident, we were playing," Luna said, as if it were natural that an invisible friend could cause such a thing. Her father entered soon after and noticed that the dresser, heavy and always leaning against the wall, was a few inches away, as if it had been pushed by something strong. There was no sign that Luna could have done it alone. The once welcoming atmosphere was tense, and a feeling of insecurity gripped them both. Still, the girl spoke of her friend with affection and gratitude, saying he didn't mean to hurt her, just getting carried away with the games. Her father, trying to maintain his emotional intelligence, didn't argue in front of her, but felt the need to be respectful of the strangeness of what was happening. The following days brought more disturbing episodes. Glasses appeared broken in the sink, books fell off the shelf by themselves, and even Luna's toys moved around, as if someone had played with them in the dead of night. One morning, her father awoke to a scratching sound coming from the hallway. When he turned on the light, he found small marks on the wall at a height a child could reach with their hands. He asked his daughter the next day, and she replied honestly, "It was him, but it was just a joke." He said he was training to be faster. It didn't sound like a child's imagination. There were too many details, a narrative with a beginning, middle, and end laden with a strange yet coherent logic. What was frightening was Luna's calm tone, as if she fully understood that her invisible friend had a mind of his own. The mother, torn between love for her daughter and growing fear, began to feel the loneliness of having no one to share this secret with without seeming insane. The most disturbing episode occurred on a rainy afternoon. Luna was playing alone when a loud noise echoed through the house. Her parents rushed in and found her on the floor next to an overturned chair. The window was open, though it had been locked minutes before, and the cold wind cut through the room like an invisible blade. The girl, still smiling, said that her friend had tried to show her how to move things without touching them. "He wants to teach me," she said with that disconcerting serenity, as if it were normal to receive telekinesis lessons from someone who wasn't there. Her father closed the window and noticed small marks on the wood, like thin claws. A shiver ran down his spine. This was no longer just innocent play. There was real power there, something testing limits and seeking space. And while the couple looked at each other, Luna, oblivious to their fear, continued to talk to herself, asking her friend to repeat the trick, but this time promising to do better. It was during a quiet dinner that the silence broke abruptly. Luna, picking at her plate with her fork, looked at her father and said matter-of-factly, "His name is Samuel." The sound of that word seemed to echo in the air, heavy and dense, as if it had traveled decades to reach that point. Her father froze, his spoon poised in midair, and a look of pure astonishment came over his face. Samuel was the name of an uncle he had lost at a young age, under circumstances the family rarely discussed. It was a closely guarded subject, hidden beneath a mixture of pain, regret, and a never-achieved reconciliation. The most disturbing thing was that Luna had no way of knowing. There were no photos of him in the house, no stories told in his presence. Her mother tried to change the subject, but Luna continued. "He said he liked to play by the lake, and that you never came to say goodbye." His father felt a deep chill, as if the understanding and wisdom in that speech came from someone who knew intimately the wound he carried. Suddenly, dinner was tasteless. Only the weight of that forbidden name remained. That night, his father couldn't sleep. He sat for hours in the living room, reliving childhood memories he thought were buried. The Samuel he knew was a cheerful, adventurous young man, endowed with affection and courage, but also marked by moments of loneliness and insecurity. He drowned in the city lake in an accident that, for many, has never been fully explained. At dawn, his father decided to ask Luna directly how she had learned that name. Her answer came with the disarming sincerity of a child. "He told me. He said he wants you to forgive him." Those words fell like a blow, reopening old wounds. Most disturbing was the way she reproduced gestures and mannerisms reminiscent of Samuel, like running her hand through her hair or laughing with a slight tilt of her head. It didn't just feel like influence. It was as if part of his essence had crossed over time to inhabit those conversations. His father began to sense that he wasn't just dealing with an imaginary friend, but a real, powerful link between the world of the living and the dead. Tensions mounted when, days later, Luna entered her father's office and pointed to an old wooden box stored in the back of the closet. "He said it's in there," she declared, with a conviction that made one's breath catch in one's chest. The father hesitantly opened the box and found a set of old letters written by Samuel before he died. No one knew those letters still existed. Among them was one with a disturbing passage: "If I can ever return, I will return to finish what I left." The father's hands trembled. He looked at his daughter and saw in her not only the love and kindness of a child, but also the perseverance and emotional intelligence of someone carrying memories of others. What had previously seemed like a game began to reveal a deep and inexplicable connection to the family's past. And deep down, a certainty took hold. Samuel wasn't just visiting. He wanted to stay. It was a quiet Sunday when Luna's mother decided to capture a simple moment: her daughter playing in her room with her dolls. She grabbed her phone, leaned it against the half-open door, and started recording, imagining she was capturing innocent laughter and small make-believe conversations. But as she played the video back, something made her stomach turn. Between Luna's lines, there were clear responses, a deep yet soft, masculine voice that fit perfectly into the pauses in the conversation. It wasn't noise, it wasn't echo. They were clear phrases like "very good" or "that's right, just like I taught you." Her mother stopped the recording in disbelief and felt her heart race. She called her father, who paled upon hearing the audio. He recognized the timbre. It was impossible, but it was Samuel's voice, identical to the one she remembered, full of affection and at the same time with an almost invisible weight, as if love and melancholy mingled in every syllable. Luna, unaware of her parents' tension, smiled and said, "He likes it when we keep memories." That night, the couple listened to the audio over and over again, trying to find a logical explanation. They considered interference, neighbors, even sounds from the street, but nothing fit. The voice was too close, too clear, with an intonation that carried understanding and insight, as if it were truly there in the room, sitting before Luna. The father, overcome with a mixture of fear and gratitude, felt part of him rejoicing at having such a real connection with someone he had lost, but another part feared the price of this connection. They decided not to show the video to anyone else, at least for now. But during the early hours of the morning, while the father was in the living room reviewing the file, he noticed something that made him break out in a cold sweat. At the end of the recording, after Luna said, "See you tomorrow," the male voice replied firmly, "I'm not going anywhere." The following days were marked by a new dynamic. Luna seemed closer to her friend, as if the trust between them had strengthened. She spent hours locked in her room, sometimes laughing, sometimes just listening in silence, her eyes fixed on an empty spot. The mother, overcome with anxiety, decided to record more often, hiding her cell phone in different places around the house. In one of the recordings, made in the hallway, she captured the voice saying something that chilled her blood. "You know what happened to me, don't you?" Luna responded softly, almost in a knowing whisper, "I know, and I'll help you." It was as if there were a silent pact there, a collaboration between worlds, fueled by generosity and perseverance, but also by secrets and unresolved pain. The father realized that these were no longer mere coincidences. Samuel wasn't just visiting, he was interacting, teaching, guiding, and becoming increasingly embedded in the family's life. It began seemingly innocently. Luna had always loved to draw, but that week, her work took a disturbing turn. The sheets of paper that had previously been filled with colorful flowers and happy houses began to show dark scenes, a dark lake surrounded by twisted trees, a blurred male figure watching from a distance, and in some drawings, a fair-haired child holding the figure's hand. What was most disturbing was the richness of detail, the texture of the rocks at the lake's edge, the precise position of the branches, even the small marks on the surface of the water. Her father immediately recognized the scene. It was the lake where Samuel had died. Luna, however, had never been there. When questioned, she replied matter-of-factly, "He showed me." He said that's where it all began. There was a mix of love, understanding, and courage in her voice, as if she were helping to keep alive the memory of someone who trusted her. But for her parents, this was more than a memory. It was proof that Samuel was sharing images directly from his own story. In one of the drawings, Luna depicted a scene that sent a chill down her mother's spine. It was a detailed depiction of an old shed with broken windows and a rusty iron gate. In the lower corner, there was something that looked like an object lying in the mud. Her father, hesitantly, realized the place was real, an old abandoned warehouse in the neighboring town, now overgrown with weeds. Even more disturbing, on the same night she drew the drawing, Luna said her friend had told her about a secret that was left behind, and that is still there. The girl didn't seem scared, just determined, as if on a mission. She spoke with generosity and perseverance, like someone wanting to offer a solution to something still pending. Her mother, however, sensed that this mission might be leading her daughter into dangerous territory, and the most terrifying thing was that Luna seemed unaware of it. The climax came when Luna handed her father a drawing depicting a clearly recognizable figure, Samuel, in meticulous detail, wearing the same leather jacket he'd been wearing on the day of the accident, something the girl had never seen before. In the background, on the paper, a larger, faceless shadow loomed over him. "That's his friend," Luna explained sincerely, "but he doesn't like to talk about it." The revelation made her father understand that Samuel wasn't alone on that bridge. Between worlds, there was another presence, perhaps older, perhaps more dangerous, and it too had access to his daughter. The drawing carried something beyond ink and paper. It felt like a veiled confession, a warning. And deep down, her father understood that this wouldn't be limited to drawings. It was just the beginning of something much larger, already moving toward them. Winter was still far away, but suddenly, Luna's room began to feel like the coldest place in the house. It wasn't a common cold, it wasn't a draft. It was a temperature that seemed to penetrate her skin and reach her bones, bringing a feeling of loneliness and fear that clashed with the girl's peaceful smile. The first to notice was her mother, who came in to bring her a blanket and was surprised to see that the air was so cold that her own breath formed small clouds in the air. Luna, sitting on the floor, played as if nothing were happening. "He said he likes it this way because it's easier for him to stay here," she explained with disconcerting sincerity. Her mother recoiled, sensing that the cold carried more than a lack of warmth. It was as if there was a silent message within it, a dark respect for the boundary that was being crossed. As she closed the door, she had the strange impression that someone or something was watching her every step down the hallway. Her father decided to test it. He placed a digital thermometer in Luna's room, while the temperature in the living room read 22 degrees Celsius. In the bedroom, the display read 9 degrees Celsius. There was no logical explanation. He turned off the portable heater, turned it back on, and changed the outlets, but nothing changed. The more time Luna spent talking to her friend, the more the temperature dropped. One night, intrigued, he stood in the doorway, simply watching. Luna laughed, glanced at the corner of the room, and gestured, as if in an animated conversation. Suddenly, a cold breeze passed over his face, coming from inside, and a barely audible voice murmured something he couldn't decipher. It wasn't his imagination. It was physical, tangible, as if the boundary between their world and the other was breaking down right there, in front of him, through sheer perseverance and the invisible collaboration between Luna and Samuel. Things got worse when the temperature began to change, even without Luna being in the room. One afternoon, the mother came in to make the bed and found the room freezing, the window glass fogged in small circular marks, as if cold fingers had touched the inside. In the center of the room, on the rug, lay a single, worn, rust-stained, old coat button. When she showed it to her husband, He recognized it immediately. It was from a jacket just like the one Samuel was wearing on the day of the accident. But how had it gotten there? Luna, upon seeing the object, smiled and said, "He wants you to know you're not alone. But the other one doesn't like you." That sentence fell like a stone, making it clear that there was more than one presence, and that the second one carried neither affection nor the power of kindness. On the contrary, it seemed to carry something deeper, something that tested their courage and announced that the next step would be even more dangerous. It was late afternoon when Luna came downstairs with a determined look on her face, unlike any expression her parents had seen before. She approached her father and said, as naturally as someone asking for a glass of water, "He wants me to take the button to the lake." Her father, who still kept the object he'd found in his room, felt his heart race. He asked why, and Luna replied, "He said it's important for him to be at peace, but also so the other one can't find him." The other, that presence that had previously been mentioned only vaguely, now loomed as a real threat. The girl spoke with understanding, affection, and even generosity, as if she were protecting someone dear. But there was one detail that disturbed her father. The request wasn't to take him with them, but rather for her to go alone. This didn't seem to come from Samuel alone. Something in the tone of his voice, in the almost adult firmness, carried a weight that childhood innocence shouldn't carry. The parents refused immediately, but Luna didn't argue. She simply said, "Okay, I'll wait." But he said time is running out. That phrase echoed in her father's mind all night. Determined to understand better, he tried to speak directly to the presence. He sat in Luna's room while she slept and spoke softly. "If you want something, talk to me." The silence lasted a few seconds, until a cold breath crossed the room and the deep voice replied, clear and slow, "I'm not talking to you." The impact was like an invisible punch, charged with a mixture of love and calculated coldness, as if Samuel respected his father but ignored his authority over Luna. Leaving the room, the man realized he wasn't just faced with a request. It was a command disguised as a noble mission, and perhaps the real objective wasn't peace, but rather to open a door that should have remained closed. The next day, Luna appeared with the button in her coat pocket, ready to leave. She said her friend had shown her exactly where to leave it, under the third large rock, near the lake where the water is darker. The description was too precise, almost like a map. Her father, overcome by a mixture of fear and perseverance, decided to accompany her without revealing his intention. While the girl played in the backyard, he put the button in a locked drawer. Hours later, upon entering her room, he felt the same biting cold and saw, on the bed, the button back in the same place Luna had left it. The message was clear. There were no barriers to that presence. If she wanted something, she would find a way to get it. And in the background, in the icy silence, her father distinctly thought he heard a second voice, harsher and lower, murmuring, "It's almost time." The night was silent, with only the distant sound of wind rustling through the trees, when Luna entered the living room with a serious expression. She sat on the sofa, faced her father, and said, "He told me what really happened at the lake." His body stiffened. Before he could react, Luna began to narrate, in disturbing detail, a scene he had never revealed to anyone. She spoke of an argument by the water's edge, of muffled screams, and a shove that shouldn't have happened. She described Samuel's expression as he sank, fear mixed with sadness, and mentioned the metal object that sank with him. Her father, gripped by a whirlwind of fear, shock, and disbelief, knew there was no way she could have known that. The words carried understanding and honesty, but also a weight that robbed her of her childlike lightness. Deep down, she felt her daughter wasn't just repeating something she'd heard, but relaying a memory someone else had experienced. Her pale mother asked Luna to explain how she'd learned these details. The girl, with unsettling calm, replied, "Samuel showed me. But the other one was there too. He didn't want me to see, but I saw." This direct mention of the other made the air in the room heavy. Luna explained that the darker presence always stood in the shade of the trees, observing, as if keeping the moment to itself. "He likes it when bad things happen because then he can stay longer," she said, without changing her tone. Her mother, almost in tears, realized that her daughter was dealing with concepts far beyond her years: death, guilt, permanence, and yet she spoke with affection and courage, as if her mission were to offer a solution to something that remained trapped in time. But the revelation made it clear that a power struggle was taking place, and Luna was at the center, collaborating with one side while being observed by the other. The father tried to hide the shock, but that night, alone in his office, he reread Samuel's letters stored in the box. In one of them, he found a phrase he'd never noticed before: "If anyone finds out, say it wasn't an accident." The meaning now seemed glaring. There was more to this story than a simple drowning. A crime lay hidden beneath decades of silence and fear, and somehow, Samuel sought reconciliation and forgiveness through Luna. But the other, whoever it was, seemed to want the opposite: to keep the wounds open, feeding on the pain and loneliness left behind. In the distance, coming from his daughter's room, the father heard a barely audible whisper, two voices overlapping, one saying, "Thank you," and the other, deeper, merely laughing. The tension was no longer just supernatural. It was personal, and it would require more courage than he'd imagined to face what was about to happen. That early morning, Luna's father and mother made a silent decision, communicated only by the firm look they exchanged. They could wait no longer. They grabbed the box containing Samuel's letters, the button, and the voice recordings, and left the house, leaving Luna in the care of their neighbor. Their destination was the lake, the point where all the stories converged. The fog was thick, covering the surface of the water like a blanket, and the air seemed colder than usual. Luna's father felt a mixture of fear, perseverance, and resilience. As they approached the shore, following Luna's descriptions, they found the third large stone. Digging into it revealed a hollow space, and there it was, an old, rusty metal box containing a pocket watch and a photograph of Samuel embracing a friend his father didn't recognize. But there was something off about the image. The friend's face was slightly blurred, as if it didn't quite belong there. It was then that a cold breath pierced the air, bringing with it a clear whisper: "He won't let us." The feeling of being watched intensified, and suddenly, behind them, a loud crack echoed through the trees. The father turned, and for an instant, saw a tall, motionless figure, arms too long for a human, watching them from a few feet away. There was no face, only the shadow of something that seemed to change shape as the gaze tried to fix it. The air grew heavy, as if sucking the warmth and courage from them. The mother, holding the button tightly, raised her voice. "Samuel, if it's you, tell us what to do." A second of silence, and then the deep, familiar voice spoke. "Take what's mine and close the path." Immediately afterward, another voice, rougher and deeper, overtook them. "Not so fast." The trees swayed without wind, and the lake water began to ripple as if something were emerging from below. The father understood there was no more time. Either they had to finish here, or they would lose Luna forever. With trembling hands, the father threw the button and the watch into the center of the lake, while the mother shouted an impromptu prayer, asking for protection, love, forgiveness, and reconciliation. The icy wind picked up, and a sound like a muffled scream echoed from the depths, followed by absolute silence. The shadowy figure by the trees began to dissolve into the mist, and for a moment, the air grew warm again. Then Samuel's voice emerged, clear and soft. "Thank you, take care of her." Then it disappeared. When they returned home, Luna was awake, sitting up in bed, and said simply, "I know what you did." He's at peace now, but the other one said it's not over. Her gaze held both hope and a faint trace of fear, as if part of the battle had been won, but the war was still far from over. After what you just heard, do you still dare say that every imaginary friend is just a figment of your imagination? How many times have you felt that inexplicable chill, heard a noise where there shouldn't be anyone, or had the strange sensation of being watched? Maybe you chose to ignore it, but what if, at this very moment, someone or something is trying to get closer to you or someone you love? This family discovered too late that some presences not only penetrate barriers, but also feed on the silence of those who pretend not to notice that. So I ask you, if it were you, would you have the courage to face what's on the other side, or would you hide, hoping it would disappear? What if tomorrow it were your turn to hear a voice where there should only be silence? Think about that before you say it's just your imagination. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications, because the next story may be exactly what you need to hear to recognize the signs before it's too late.